Hey, what's going on YouTube? Son of Sanguinius here, and today we're going to be continuing our Angels Blade review with a look at the Archangels Demi-Company. So the Archangels Demi-Company, its formation consists of 1 Terminator Captain, 2 Furioso Dreadnoughts, and 5 units chosen in any combination from the following list: Terminator Squads, Terminator Assault Squads, Vanguard Veteran Squads, or Sternguard Veteran Squads. Special rules are Stubborn, Elite Strike Force, make reserve rolls for this for units in this formation from your first turn. Storm of Angels, you can re-roll failed reserve rolls for units in this formation with the Deep Strike special rule. In addition, units from this formation arriving from Deep Strike scatter D6 less than normal. And the Angel's Virtue, if this is chosen as your primary detachment, you can re-roll the result when rolling on the Warlord traits table in Codex Blood Angels. So, the Archangels Demi-Company, this is an elite heavy formation with a heavy emphasis on deep strike, and from the units that are kind of listed here, basically either close fire support or assaulting, based on the units that are given here. This is fairly expensive. This is also a core choice in Angel's Blade, and while I'm definitely not as hard on this core choice as I was on the Battle Demi-Company, this, now I should preface this. This is not the end of the world. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's good. It's decent. If the Battle Demi-Company was an E, this is probably a C. This is palatable. You can work with this. Granted, it's going to be very expensive, and I've tried to build lists around this, and the lists that I've wound up coming up with are like 2,500 points or more. This is kind of a common theme with Angel's Blade, not to get off track here, but you will find that with a lot of the formations in here, they're designed for much larger point games than what is typically normal. So if you're playing 1,500 points or 2,000 points, chances are you're not gonna have a whole lot of room to fit in a lot of the formations here into your lists. However, if you're playing 2,500 points, 3,000 points, 4,000 points on those rare occasions, Angel's Blade, I think, is where it excels in that area. But getting back on track here, we can kind of discuss some of the units in depth here. So the first thing on the list is the Terminator Captain, and I mentioned before that really I wouldn't necessarily do a whole lot with the Terminator Captain as far as any upgrades goes. I mentioned that you can kind of give him a Storm Shield, make him a close combat HQ. Again, reincorporating the idea of like a scalpel, just removing your enemies, elites, and HQs. You can certainly do that in this. I would probably just leave him bare bones. Storm Shield, Thunderhammer and Stormbolter, Terminator Armor, whatever. He's fine as is. Next up, we have the 2 Furioso Dreadnoughts. Honestly, a fairly hefty tax in this formation. I don't really think this formation really needs that. Are they useless? No. The Furioso Dreadnoughts can provide some good, not only good, close fire support, but also some decent anti-armor support here. Aside from giving your Vanguard veterans power fists or thunderhammers, there really isn't a whole lot of monstrous creature killing, vehicle removing stuff in here. Aside from just charging with something that happens to have either power fists or thunderhammers or power axes, whatever. So, concerning the 2 Furiosos, I would probably give them frag cannons and heavy flamers, as I like to do. In this particular case, the Magna Grapple is certainly an option, as there really isn't too much anti-vehicle fire support in this formation. You can augment it with different things concerning if you are building this into an Angel's Blade strike force. We can talk more about that later when we get to the detachment reviews. However, suffice it to say, the 2 Furiosos, I would give them frag cannons, heavy flamers, potentially a Magna Grapple inside of drop pods. Next up, I would bring along 2 Sternguard squads. Honestly, no upgrades. I mentioned this in my Sternguard tactics review. Sternguard are good as is, and frankly, considering how expensive this formation is going to be, you really don't need to spend any excess points on them. Sternguard are great. You pay for the special issue ammunition, and really, if they just had that, they're fine. No upgrades. You can either foot slug them in the backfield to have them take objectives on your side of the tabletop, or you can put them in a Rhino and Razorback, potentially move them up to midfield. Or if you want to emphasize the deep strike aspect of this formation, which you can do considering you're scattering D6 less and you're making reserve rolls from your first turn, you can also put them in drop pods alongside the Furioso Dreadnoughts. So next up, we have 2 Vanguard veteran squads. I would only bring 2. I wouldn't bring more, simply because they're a point sink. GW hasn't updated the cost of power weapons in their thing. It still costs us 15 points to bring something. So what would I do? Honestly, 2 Vanguard veteran squads. All of them have storm shields. Perhaps one or two of them have power swords. One of them has a power fist or thunder hammer. Really, it just comes down to if I'm going to be fighting monstrous creatures or not. If I am, I'm probably going to want the thunder hammer. If not, just save the 5 points, go with the power fist. So you could also throw these guys into a drop pod, as I said before. They certainly have the option to do that. As far as the Vanguard veterans are concerned, I probably would deep strike them simply because it's much more reliable given the Storm of Angels special rule that comes with this formation. So, just to sort of recap, I would keep the Stern Guard, kind of in the backfield or in a Razorback or a Rhino. The 2 Furiosos in drop pods, deep striking alongside the Vanguard veterans, who are, basically going to be coming in on the table. And lastly, I would just bring a normal Terminator squad for the Terminator captain to sort of sit in. Potentially bringing an assault cannon, chain fist, maybe a cyclone missile launcher. These are, I consider to be, reasonable upgrades. Again, depending on the points cost of, the various units, the points for this particular formation just can climb sky high, which makes sense. It is an elite, this formation is basically made up of all elite units. However, just keep that in mind as you play, if you plan on incorporating this into your list somewhere. This is a definite heavy point sink. It's not bad, but just keep in mind that whatever you upgrade with, however you intend to use this, just be careful about the way you upgrade this. So you got the Terminator captain in there with his Terminator squad. You got the assault cannon, potentially a chain fist, maybe a cyclone missile launcher, depending on how the points shake out. You could either have these guys sitting in a backfield, or you could deep strike them alongside your Vanguard veterans and your Furioso Dreadnoughts, and basically just unleash lead and hell upon your opponent from the first turn, hopefully. So that's basically how it is with this formation as I see it. Obviously, you could, just deep strike everything, and I think that would probably be an effective list. I would shy away from putting, more than one Terminator squad in here, simply because you already have that with the Archangels Orbital Intervention Force, and I feel like that kind of does deep strike for Terminators better. However, this formation certainly has that sort of alpha strike feel. That sort of deep striking in, unleashing, lead and hell upon your opponent, or get it moving into position. You can't charge turn 1 with this formation. However, you can deep strike accurately, get into position, so that way you can charge on your next turn, and you're arriving from deep strike turn 1, hopefully. So that's kind of how I see this. You keep the Stern Guard in the backfield, or you can move them up to midfield. Perhaps they have a Rhino, Razorback. Maybe they're in a drop pod. Who knows? For Vanguard veterans, you're probably going to want to push them forward. After they deep strike in, they're going to be eliminating your enemy's troops, their fast attacks. Basically, their scoring units, if any. You could sort of kit them out too to fill an anti-vehicle role. If you wanted to go with something like Thunder Hammers or Power Fists, or perhaps something like Inferno Pistols, you could also go with there. Vanguard veterans also have access to Grav Pistols. That may be something you might want to consider. But regardless, you're probably going to be pushing in with your Vanguard veterans, eliminating your enemy's troops and fast attacks. The Furiosos kind of fit in, they're kind of difficult, simply because normally how I would use a Furioso is I would tag it inside of a Storm Raven, alongside a Terminator squad, and then just have like a mini Death Star in there. For these guys, however, I think since they're coming in drop pods, they would basically be supporting the Vanguard veterans when they deep strike, or the Terminator squad with the Terminator captain inside when they deep strike in. So they're gonna disembark. They're gonna open some fire, provide some nice close combat support, and provide some much needed anti-vehicle support in this formation. There really isn't a whole lot here. You have the Terminators that can do some damage with their power fists. You could bring Terminator assault squads as well with Thunderhammer, Storm Shield. That's certainly a possibility. Stern Guard can do some work against monstrous creatures, and Vanguard veterans again. You can give them, Thunder Hammers, Storm Shields, whatever. However, as far as vehicles are concerned, with the Magna Grapple and all that, I would opt to use the Furioso Dreadnoughts in that particular role. So yeah, and then lastly, you have the Terminator squad with the captain. Again, they can either sit back and just provide some supporting fire. It may be somewhat cowardly, but you definitely want to try and keep your warlord alive as long as possible, assuming that he is your warlord in this formation. Or you could deep strike them in, cause some havoc, among the enemy lines, as you see fit. Again, it's probably not going to be as effective as the Archangels Orbital Intervention Force, simply because you can't charge out a deep strike and you can't shoot twice. But it is kind of a nifty little thing that you can deep strike much more accurately. Perhaps you want to plot him down on an objective, force your opponent to turn their attention towards him, while the rest of your army either comes in from the flanks or exploits openings that your opponents create while trying to deal with everything coming down on top of them at once. So, the Archangels Demi-Company, honestly, it's expensive. It's fairly expensive, and you can certainly work with it. I wouldn't say that it's a bad formation. Just be careful of where you put your points. Be careful of how much points you're spending on this. And chances are, I feel like the Archangels Demi-Company does need some support from something else. There is a noticeable lack of anti-vehicle, anti-monstrous creature as far as ranged options are concerned. Again, you could sort of, kit out the Stern Guard to do that, but again, with each special and heavy weapon that you're getting, you're losing a bolter with that special issue ammunition. And frankly, I don't like to do that, considering that Stern Guard are there for special issue ammunition. You pay for special issue ammunition, and that stuff is awesome. So that's really all I have to say here on the Archangels Demi-Company. It's expensive and it needs support. You should probably use it wisely. However, it can certainly be effective. You can get your guys where they need to be. Turn one, deep strike. Deep strike is much more accurate. It can be pretty devastating if used correctly. So, anyway, that's all I have to say for now. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say down below in the comments. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.